So my name is Kenn Renner, real estate broker. I've been in real estate since 1983. I purchased my first home when I was 19 years old. And I got my first real estate license when I was 19 years old in Anchorage, Alaska. And I moved up there to finish high school and start college. And since then, and over the years since I started real estate, I've closed over $250 million in real estate. That's a lot. That's $250 million in houses. Amounts to thousands of home buyers. And in the last 5 years, I've closed over $100 million in real estate, residential single-family homes. And my career really took off in 1994 when I started doing first-time home buying seminars and when I moved to Austin. And so what I wanted to do back then was create a book and a manual to allow people to take that seminar presentation that I did and turn it into a book that was comprehensive, that people could be benefited by being able to pick up this book and learn. Because I realized a long time ago that real estate is not about me, it's not about real estate agents, it's about you. Everybody's different, everybody has different needs, different wants. And I'm going to change my website now to say real estate is about you, because in the real estate industry it seems like it's always about, oh, it's about come work with me, come use this real estate agent, and it's really not about the real estate agent. It's about your needs and wants and how to accomplish that. So the book really started. I started writing it last year, and it took me 11 months to write the book. I thought I could do it in 3. Because I had done the seminars hundreds of times. But what happened was that I also, at 47 years old, my wife got pregnant. And so last year at this time, we had our 3rd baby, Julia. And so I like to say sometimes that the baby beat the book. The book took 11 months, the baby, of course, took 9. So anyways, I really appreciate you guys coming out. And I want to really kind of start this out with Thanksgiving. I want to be thankful for the Catherine Mason, for KPLE Studios, for allowing me to come here and present, and that's honoring the folks here at KPLE. I want to thank Petey for connecting me with that. And I think there's going to be divine relationships that are created out this, because real estate is all about relationships, and of course we are in a Christian broadcasting studio, so I'd like to thank the Lord Jesus for being able to help us through this. And I have to dedicate a lot of my success over the years is to following His Word, and a lot of it has to do with is helping people and making sure that they know that buying a home is not that difficult of a process. But that you also have a lot of things that can scare you away from purchasing a home, and we're going to cover some of that. So, starting with the book, I've given you the book, and in the front of the book is my phone number and my name, and so you're welcome to go ahead and call me. The purpose of what I'm trying to do here is not only to be able to record this for future use, put it on YouTube, and educate people that all over the world, but also to help even the troops overseas. In fact, they can get a free download of this book by freehomebuyingbook.com. There's a free download of this book, and I've offered that in the newspaper and Fort Hood, the Killeen Daily Herald and all that, to allow some of the people in, some of our troops that are working so hard overseas to be able to get the book and download it, because I think they get a lot of misinformation a lot of times about purchasing homes. They get that information of, why would you want to buy a home? You're in the military, you move around and things like that. And so we want to honor the troops, because really, realistically, buying a home can be one of the best financial moves that you could ever make. And another thing that we have to realize is that in real estate, the real estate market is different in different areas. Do we know that right now, right here in Central Texas, we're in a drought, right? But in other parts of the country, there's what? Flooding going on. And so really what happens is that just like real estate, it's different in different areas. The problem is the news media out there purports and tells everybody that, oh, real estate's a bad investment. Time magazine telling you don't want to buy a house, it's just going to cause financial disaster. USA Today, that is a real problem, and it doesn't apply to Central Texas. Central Texas is probably the shining silver lining of the whole United States. And let me tell you why. Because number one is real estate markets are cyclical. First of all, the real estate values go up, then they go down, and then they go up, and then they go down. And why I moved here from California in 1993 was because I saw that the California market was overheated. Only 12% of the people could afford a median price home. And I was like, only 12%. Well, and me being in real estate saying that stands for trouble. I'm not going to be able to make a living. So I started getting a map out of the United States. Where can I move to where we're not having a recession? So I basically moved to Central Texas where there were jobs. And that's where what we're looking for in real estate and stability in real estate values is where are the jobs. And in fact, in Central Texas, there was job growth, just like there is now, the highest job growth in the nation. So I picked up my new bride and brought her to Texas. She's a California girl, kicking and screaming. Brought her to Texas, and it was tough at first because she had leave the family back home and all that kind of stuff, and she'd grown up a California girl. But guess what? One by one, the entire family came out to join us, aunts and uncles and everybody to join us here in Central Texas. Another quick story too about that was my brother-in-law was in the military right here in Fort Hood, and he bought a home way back then, and not far from here, and got married and bought a home. Then he got stationed over in South Korea, and then came back, and really he couldn't sell it at the time because he didn't have any equity. He only had it for a couple of years. Well, now he has taken that home and he's almost got it paid off. So he's going to be able to now he's been renting it because he lives now in the Austin area. Now he'll be able to rent that and have on top of his military retirement, have an income of maybe $1,200–1,500 a month on top of his military pay, his retirement pay. So that's kind of one of the things that we like to talk about is that the reason we had problems in the national market is we lost the vision of what real estate and home is all about. Home is about shelter. It's about owning a piece of property that is something that you own and that you will eventually pay off. And that's one thing that you can't pay rent off. You can pay rent forever. So number one is that mortgage is cheaper than rent in many ways because of the deductions, and I'll get into that. But also the rent that you pay will never be paid off. So I'm going to get into some quick stories before we get into the meat of the. I'm going to also go ahead and give you a quick outline of what we're going to cover over the next hour and a half or so. Once again, this taped broadcast will be put on YouTube, and it'll be divided up into little chunks. So anything that you missed or whatever, you can go to my YouTube channel and I'll get that to you. It's in my book, but if you go to buyaustin.com, because I am from the Austin area. In fact, you can go to buykilleen.com, and that will also hook you into to the YouTube. And I have 350 educational videos along with house videos and stuff like that. And I have the #1 YouTube channel in the nation for real estate. I have over 6.3 million views on that YouTube channel. And it's because I know that video, getting in front of everybody on video, is going to be the cutting edge, just like this TV station uses YouTube as well to be able to get in front of their customers, clients, and to get the word out. So the table of contents first is number one. Section 1 is some home buying motivations, and the reason why I put the motivations in here is that there's frequently asked questions that, like we talked about, some of the media hype, the media mania that's really causing a lot of people to have fear when it comes to owning real estate. I talk about the Great American Dream in Chapter 1. In Chapter 2, we talk about home buying, reasons why you'd want to own a home. Chapter 3, I talk about my rich dad, poor dad story, a true story about my rich dad, who's my father-in-law, and my poor dad, who went to go see the Lord a couple of years ago. And I'm going to talk about the difference between the two, similar to the Robert Kiyosaki story. Number 4 is building a team of trusted advisors. And that's really important because real estate is all about trust, and it's something that we've lost over the last few years is trust in the industry and trust in the people that are in the industry. We've lost trust in the mortgage industry, but there are still good trusted advisors out there, and we can't just throw everybody out with the bathwater because real estate in the long term is always going to be a good investment. All right, so the chapter 5 is the meat of the book. So if you don't read anything else but section 2, chapter 5, that would be the section of the book if you're going to buy a home to read, because it's the 10 steps to the home buying process, one by one. And I have a lot of clients I give this book to, and they read it, and they're so excited about, wow, I went through the steps, we're on step 1, now we're on step 3, now we're on step 4. And the reason why the book works so good is because, and why I use it as a tool, is because when I have an educated home buyer, I have somebody who knows what the next step is going to be and knows the right questions to ask, and I can answer all those questions. And what it does is it really takes the mystery out of it. There is so much, there's 180 pages, there's so much to learn about buying a home that this is why. So start with, if you're not going to read any other chapter, read chapter 5. Then we have section 3, which is real estate insider secrets. You know, we're all about revealing what's true and what's not true, okay? And you know, real estate, in the real estate industry, I think we're the 3rd least trusted industry in the market. I think it's politicians, used car salesmen, and then real estate agents. Least trusted, because the problem is because they're perceived to be salespeople to make a sale. What you don't want to be looking at for is not salespeople, but consultants, okay? And that's why I drive up here. It took me an hour to get here. I don't mind doing that, and I don't mind being your consultant driving here to get here for an hour, because you know what? If you're going to a specialist or a CPA that knows exactly, or you're going to drive to wherever, I mean, to meet these people, to talk with the people that are the specialists in the industry. So like I said, I don't mind coming up and working with you through the whole home buying process. Okay. Chapter 6 is credit report secrets revealed. I'm going to teach people that there are certain things that you need to do with your credit report, and there are certain things that you don't want to do with your credit report. And some of the things that you thought might be right to do with your credit report is going to mess your credit score up. Some of the things that you may have thought were wrong to do with a credit report could actually help you. So we'll go over into some of those details about how to get the scores up. The 2 biggest hurdles for home buying, first-time home buying especially, is cash and credit. A lot of that's solved by the VA. Does anybody a veteran in here or have VA eligibility? Okay, so a lot of that's solved by the VA. You can go in 0 down, 0 total move-in, and then also with the FHA, which means if you're not a veteran, you can go Federal Housing Administration, which allows you to get in for 3.5%. Okay. So, but the credit scores, credit has changed, and the way they do credit, and they don't want you to figure out credit, because if everybody figured out how to get their credit scores up, then the credit model wouldn't work. But in this book, I spent hours with people in the credit industry, because I think that it's important that people don't get discouraged just because they've been told no because their credit score was at a particular spot. All right, next is home loan secrets. You know, most people are going to get a home loan, and I was a mortgage company owner for 5-7 years. I was a president of a real estate mortgage company, and so I know the ins and outs. And really, the mortgage industry has completely changed since I was the president of a mortgage company, but I still know it. Chapter 9 is a chapter on foreclosures, short sales, and REOs. And we're going to talk a little bit about what is realistic with those, what we call distressed properties. And then chapter 10 is just a recap of the 160 secrets that I reveal throughout the entire book. All right. So I'm going to jump over to chapter 1, actually introduction. Okay. I think it's important to talk about my first-time home buying experience, because at 19 years old, it can be a pretty scary thing. And what happened is I moved to Anchorage, Alaska, and I just had graduated from school, and I was working in the grocery store, and pushing grocery baskets in the middle of sub-zero weather. And I said, you know, after about a year of that, I said, you know, there's got to be a better way. So I asked my dad, who is a real estate attorney, I said, you know, what should I do, Dad, to stay out of the grocery store parking lots? I just don't want to do this forever. And he said, real estate and finance, real estate and finance. And so I said, okay. So what happened is that my sister was an on-site sales agent at one of the subdivisions up there, and she had especially spot out a really good lot that was the best one in the whole subdivision, and she held it off and came to me and said, Ken, would you like to buy a house? And I said, well, sure, I guess, you know, why not, you know, sure, I'll buy a house with you. And it was a really cool lot because it was the very end of a cul-de-sac. It was all by itself, and there were a couple other houses on the other side of the cul-de-sac. And I'm like, great, this is awesome. So I'm dialing in, I'm going to buy this house, I'm going to become a homeowner, I'm going to own my own little piece of Alaska. Isn't that great? $70,000. It was $72,000. And I was like, wow, $72,000, that, you know, I can do it. Went to the mortgage company and I started going, oh no, they're going to find out about that Chevron gas card that I let go a couple years ago. And then buyer's remorse starts setting in. I'm like, oh, they're going to rake me over the coals here in the mortgage company. I'm like, I'm going to be so embarrassed. They're going to take out that credit report and they're just going to go like this. And I'm like, I'm not going to be able to do this. And I'm like, so what happened is then, of course, what we call buyer's remorse sets in. And buyer's remorse is a natural reaction to any home buying process. And I tell all my clients, one of the most important things to realize is that you will have buyer's remorse when you purchase a home. And it will either usually happen at the beginning of the process, or it will happen at the end of the process, or somewhere in between. And then also, if you're married, your spouse will also go through a buyer's remorse process, okay? The key here is to hope that you and your spouse don't have buyer's remorse at the same time, because that's when the deal falls apart. So I had my first bout of buyer's remorse. But you know, the lady was really nice at the mortgage company. She was in this big, tall glass building. And I went up there and she was on the corner office. She was really nice, very accommodating, talking about how the federal government was going to help me out and get this mortgage. And don't worry about those last two little Chevron cards. Everybody has a couple glitches. We'll just write a letter of explanation and you'll be able to get your home. So I was walking out of that office and I saw all these busy people working. It was very busy in 1983 in Anchorage, Alaska. It was a real estate boom going on. I saw all these people working there and I'm like, this kind of looks neat. I kind of like what they're doing here. I think I could do this for a living. And so that's what started. So not only was I going to get a mortgage, but I also had a career move, or an inspiration for a career. And so I was really like, wow, this is kind of cool. I'd like to sit on that corner office and help people. So that was my first experience of starting the process. You know, we got to go pick out the cabinet colors and pick out the carpet and watch this little house get developed. And I was really, really excited about the whole thing. And then it got towards the closing time. And then it was getting really, once again, that buyer's remorse set back in. I'm like, okay, the enormity of the whole thing, 30-year mortgage. I'm 19 and I'm going to be 49 by the time this thing gets paid off. Where am I going to be when I'm 49? And I'm like, oh no, you know, it's just like, I don't know. Buyer's remorse set in again. So I get to the closing table and I'm sitting there and my sister's sitting there. She was co-signing with me because I couldn't qualify quite all on my own. So she's co-signing with me and she's taking the pen and she's going, come on, little brother. She knew it was a great deal. Come on, little brother, come on. I'm like, no, I'm not doing it. And so finally, you know, what happened is I signed on the dotted line and all of a sudden I went back to the house with the keys in my hand and all of a sudden all that buyer's remorse went out the door and I'm sitting in there is no better feeling in a lot of ways of that first time of waking up in your own home for the first time, especially when I was my age. I thought it was a pretty darn good accomplishment. So that was my first time home buying experience, and I was excited living in this neat little house, calling it my own, got my real estate license, was doing property management and things like that. And then all of a sudden, 6 months later, guess what happens? My parents and everybody decided, we're going back to California. We're going. I was like, oh, great, I just bought a home. I'm going to be the only one left up here in Alaska. I'll be a lonely man, and it can be cold in the winters up there, long nights, no family. Okay, so buyer's remorse was over, right? I already owned the house, okay? So guess what? My sister comes to the rescue again. So she comes to the rescue, and this is kind of neat. A military guy had bought the house across the street from me. Retired military guy, really nice man, and he was retired, and that was it. This was the home he was that was his last home he was gonna buy. Well, his buddy was another military retired guy, and you know, it's a military town up in Anchorage, Alaska. There's Fort Richardson, there's Elmendorf Air Force Base, and so this military guy had come back, and they wanted to live next to each other right there for the rest of their lives, buddy. They had been through 2 wars together, and they didn't really care about any other houses except they wanted to live right across the street from each other. That was their dream all along. Well, I had bought the house that he wanted. Okay, well, my sister says, well, guess what? You know, things have kind of changed with our living situation, my brother, and you know, I think we might be going back to California. We've got this wonderful little house at the end of the cul-de-sac, the exact one that you want. And he said, okay, I'll buy it. And of course, my sister's a good negotiator, so she said, you know, $103,000, does that sound good? Sure, I'll pay $103,000 for it, okay? And so all this is going behind the scenes. I'm still back at my house pouting, going, what am I gonna do? My family's leaving and all this stuff. And so she comes and she says, I've got a solution. He's gonna pay $103,000 and he's gonna pay cash. So there was no need to worry about a loan or the appraisal or anything like that. You know, it didn't really matter to him. He wanted to be there with his buddy, and that was his last home, and that was the motivation for buying. Him and his wife, they all knew each other for years and years and years, and they bought that house, and they paid $103,000. So $72,000, and I sold it 6 months later for $103,000. That's home time. That's first time home buying. I'm liking that, you know. And I was able to go back with my family to California, and so that was the kind of the story of that first time home buying. All this fear and trepidation, and it was all solved when we just helped somebody else with their dream. Their dream, these military guys, was to live together for the rest of their lives across the street from each other. So, kind of a fun story that I talk about that. Now, what I do wish is that I still had that house. I'll be 48 this year, so when I bought at 19 on a 30-year mortgage, guess what would have happened next year? House would have been paid off. That house is now worth $250,000 that I paid. Okay, so now the military guy now has $150,000 equity that could have been mine. I could have rented that house out for the previous 30 years. It would have positive cash flowed, or at least broke even the whole time. It would have been paid off, and I would have had a nice little house, fishing lodge, vacation lodge, right there in Anchorage, Alaska. I could go visit anytime. I could give it to my friends to go visit. They could fly up there, and I would have no mortgage payment on it. What a great thing that I could have had, and also the equity that was in there. Or I could have rented it out and had positive cash flow for the rest of my life. Because that little house is still there. It's worth a heck of a lot more than I paid for it. And so it would have given me freedom. It would have given me a retirement home. Think about it. It was a little one-story. I just got a call today from a lady that's looking for condos that I've got listed. All I have is 2 stories. And they say, don't they know we're baby boomers, we're growing up, we want 1 stories? And so one of the things we talk about in the book is one of the best retirement homes could possibly be your first home that you buy. The home that my brother-in-law bought right over here in Killeen, he now would be able to live there because it's almost paid off. He has now a retirement home to move to. It's a nice house. It's 1,800 square foot, 1 story. Do you need anything more than that in your retirement? No, probably not. So we kind of talk about the whole thing about is that maybe holding on to that first home could be the best financial move you could ever make. Pay it, let somebody else, if you move and get your other homes and have a bigger family later on, and even if you move out of the area, let somebody else make the mortgage payments, pay that thing off, and then you have something that you can count on in the long run. Couple things about real estate, about this real estate market. We all know it's a buyer's market, but right here in Central Texas, guess what? It's going from a buyer's market to a seller's market. They can't build them fast enough. They can't develop the land fast enough, and part of the reason why is there's difficulty for developers to get financing to develop land. So what's going to happen is because we're here in Central Texas, I've got all these jobs that are available. And plus, we have, for the Fort Hood area, we have a military base that's not going anywhere. Now, guess what? Do we think the world's going to get safer over the next 10 or 20 years? Do we think the world's going to get safer around the world? I mean, realistically, thank God we got Osama bin Laden, but they're still out there. And so we're going to be, over the next several years, it's going to be a very, very interesting time. And the military here that protects our nation, all the divisions here, the military bases, those are not going to go away. We are in for whatever's going to happen in the near future. I don't think it's going to be a much safer place in the in the world. So I do think our military is going to be strong for the ongoing future. We are the protectors of the world, aren't we? So that means one thing: when people get transferred into Fort Hood, they're going to have a place to stay. They're either going to buy or they're going to rent. Okay. And my encouragement is that they buy so that they can get in, because I talked to D.R. Horton's sales manager here, and they said that they've sold 600 homes last year, and they really only had capacity to sell 500. And I'm saying, well, what's the difference? And he says, because the military is starting to lower their base housing allowance of what they'll pay, or they don't pay the utilities anymore. So people are saying, hey, we could go and buy a house, have the military, our housing allowance, pay for that, and it's tax deductible. So there's all these good reasons, and so they can't build them fast enough. So that's a supply and demand problem, right? Well, also, what has happened to the price of gas? And do we think the price of gas is really going to go down? I mean, I just filled up my tank; it was almost $4 a gallon. And what that means is everything having to do with the building of a house has, guess what? Something having to do with gas involved. Right, the trucks that bring the lumber have got gas, so their gas prices are going up. The people that bring the drywall, the plumbers, everybody that's involved in the building. In fact, a lot of the construction materials are made out of petroleum type products. So with the value of gas going up and the supply going down of available homes and available lots, what do you think is going to happen to the value of real estate, especially in this area? It's going to go up. What happened was, like we said earlier, is that it got overinflated in other parts of the nation, but it didn't get overinflated here. That's the other thing to realize, is that we had a bubble that burst on the coast. It went 2 years longer than it should have because of the free money that was out there that they were loaning out. It went 2 years too long. Well, that's not what's happening now. Okay. So we go from a perfect storm to a perfect opportunity. You can still buy homes at the lowest interest rates, the lowest cost of money in history. Our rates are now down again to 4.5%. I never thought in my whole history that I'd see interest rates at 4.5%. So the cost of money is incredibly low. It's about $6 per thousand that you borrow. That's your total mortgage payment, but especially VA, because they don't have mortgage insurance. $6 per thousand. $100,000 you can borrow for what? $600 a month. $150,000 you can borrow. What's that? $900 a month. $6 per thousand is an incredibly low cost of money. In fact, the mortgage money is the cheapest money that you can borrow, because it's tax deductible, and we'll get into that in a second. So one of the other things that I encourage people to do is to think about buying a home for their kids. That's another thing as we start going up. I bought a home back in 1993 that will be paid off by the time my child goes to college. Okay, so that's a really simple thing to do. You just buy a house when they're born, rent it out on a 15-year mortgage, and by the time they're ready to go to college, that house should have, in Texas, the values double about every 15 years. They would have been able to, I could have sold that house, pay for their education completely, or just let them stay there and they can go to Texas A&M or UT or whatever it is. And so that's another avenue, is to buy your kids a home. All right, we're going to get into a couple of the reasons why, chapter 2, we should be buying a home as opposed to renting. Okay, so first reason is security. Okay, what I mean by that is you won't be forced to move. I have an investment property in a subdivision in Austin called Avery Ranch, and I have decided that at this point in time, I would like, after 10 years of renting it to Tammy, the lady who was living there, she was on Section 8. She was paying that my mortgage off for me, but I've decided that I want to take that money and move it somewhere else. So her lease was up, and I told her, I said, look, I'm sorry, but you're gonna have to move because I want to sell the house. And so that's what happened. So she ended up going and renting somewhere else, and after 10 years, now she's been forced to move. And that's something that happens when you're a homeowner. You're not going to be forced to move. As long as you pay the mortgage payment and the property taxes, you can't be forced to move. And in Texas, we have the strongest homestead rules in the nation. And what I mean by the homestead laws is they cannot take your house for any major reason other than not making the mortgage payment or making the property taxes. If there was a judgment against you, if you caught into some major problems with financial difficulties, as long as you make that mortgage payment and that property tax, that they can't take it away from you. So it's very well secured. Homestead laws are here very, very, very tough and in the favor of the homeowner. That's why Willie Nelson was able to hold on to his ranch at the time when he was going bankrupt and all that other fun stuff because of the homestead laws. The other thing is your improvements are yours. And that's another nice thing is that a lot of times people will paint walls and put in gardens in their rental house, and then sure enough the owner comes and says, okay, it's time for you to sell, and those improvements stay with the property. So you get to put with the money and stuff that you put in the house, you get to keep. The next one of the reasons, also security, over the long run, it's also a financial shelter. And because the bottom line is that someday that loan will be paid off. Okay, and the next reason is tax benefits. Tax benefits. The interest on your home mortgage is 100% tax deductible, and so is the property taxes. Okay, so we talk to people all the time that say, well, I'm renting for $1,000 a month, and that's where I want to keep my payment because that's what I feel comfortable and that's what I can afford. And I say, oh, great, you can afford now $1,250 in a mortgage payment because you now have a deduction that you didn't have before. Being a renter, you don't have a big deduction. As a homeowner, you have a huge deduction through property taxes and interest deduction the government allows us to take. Okay, what I mean by that is that if you have a $1,200 house payment, then about $200 of that will be taxed. You won't be paying the federal government. Let's take an example. If you pay $1,200 in a mortgage payment, and that would be over 12 months, would be 12. What is that? 14,400. Okay, so you pay about $15,000 of tax deductible money. If you're making $35,000, they only tax you on 20, the government. If you're making $50,000, they only tax you on 35 because it's an interest deduction off the top of your mortgage. I mean, off of the top of your income. And a lot of people don't realize that, and they're saying, well, why, but then I've got to wait till the end of the year to get that. And I said, no, you don't. You can go to your employer and say, I want to claim more exemptions, and I want you to stop taking so much out of my check because I'm a homeowner now. So that's some of the things that people, especially first-timers, don't understand, that there's huge tax benefits for owning your own property. So the other thing that is a tax benefit is that a lot of the closing costs involved in purchasing a home is also tax deductible. So you can check with your accountant and find out what deductions you're going to be able to take on that. Another nice thing is that when you sell the home, you will not pay capital gains if you're single up to $250,000 in capital gains, or if you're married up to $500,000 in capital gains, as long as you've owned that house more than 2 out of the last 5 years. So take that home in Alaska that I had that I sold for $100,000 back in so many years ago, and then if I'd sold it now and made $150,000 profit, if I was to move back into it for 2 years and sold it, all that would have been tax-free. So that's one of the other things that we can look at, is that over the years, as real estate, even though it goes cyclical up and down, over the years it has a tendency to go up and beat inflation all the time. The third reason that you should be looking at purchasing a home is investment. Through booms and busts, even with the last boom and bust over the last recent years, over the course of the last 20 years, the appreciation factor in real estate has been 4.4% as reported by the National Association of Realtors, 4.4% per year. So sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less, sometimes it goes back. So really, if you're looking at your investment as you put zero down on a $150,000 house and it goes up 4%, what does that mean? What did you just gain? $6,000 or $7,000 in equity or net worth. Now, and the first thing they teach you in real estate schools is don't ever promise appreciation, because values go up, but values go down. But over the long haul, they have a tendency to always go up. Why? Because the cost of everything else goes up. The cost of rent will be going up. The cost of gas goes up. The cost of the supplies, everything goes up over time. It's just the natural inflation. So if you put zero down and you just follow inflation, you're going to do really, really well on a home. Now, we want to make sure, though, that realize that home ownership is not a short-term investment. It's not a flipper. It's not where you buy, and I mean, this is the whole purpose of buying it is for shelter. It's to shelter your income. It's through the tax benefits. It's to shelter your future through having a place to stay and paid off when you don't want to work anymore. So we have to keep it that way. I think we lost sight over the last couple of years of people buying and selling, flipping, buying, selling, flipping. Okay, and really the opportunity is now. Even if you're a veteran, you can buy foreclosures at way cheaper and with very little closing costs than you could just buying a resale from somebody else. So we'll talk a little bit about that towards the end. So security, tax benefits, investment. Those are the three major reasons. Okay, I talk a little bit about my rich dad, poor dad story. Why I call my rich dad, poor dad is because my rich dad is still alive. He's still with us, and that's my father-in-law. And he's been kind of my mentor for a long time. He had started buying property, and actually was a cookware salesperson. Really good at it, to sell those really fancy cookware sets. And eventually he got into real estate, but he'd always bought his homes and held them, and then he would buy another one and held them. Sometimes he would sell them, but over the long haul, he was more of a buy and holder kind of guy. My poor dad, why I say that, God rest his soul, is that he, though he was a real estate attorney, didn't keep the property over the years. The first house that I remember and that I lived in is when my dad moved from Frankfurt, Germany to Fort Knox, Kentucky, because I was being born and he wanted me to be born in the United States. He got transferred from Frankfurt. He was a captain in the Army, and he went to Fort Knox, and that's where I was born, at Ireland Army Hospital at Fort Knox. And so then he moved out of the military and went into civil law, real estate law, corporate law, and that was in California. He bought a house in San Mateo, California, $17,000 in 1963, and it was a VA loan. So he zero down, and he bought that house. He got transferred with his company back east a few years later, and he sold that house for $27,000. So he did pretty well. He thought he was doing really well selling that house for $27,000, and he had zero into it, and he bought it for $17,000. Okay. Well, that house today is worth $1 million. That's down 20% from the $1.2 million that it was worth just a few years ago. Okay. So, and that house would have been paid off 10 years ago. You think about that 30-year mortgage. I'm 47. It would have been paid off 15 years ago. Think about that. He could have lived back in that house, and he would have been an accidental millionaire, right? Because the house would have been long paid off, it worth $1 million, and he would have been an accidental millionaire. Just that one house. And or what he could have done is rented it out and lived over here in Texas and rented it out for $2,500 a month. Had a nice little tidy retirement income. So I talk about that because my rich dad is my father-in-law, and guess what he's out doing right now? He's part of my team. He's still in his early 70s. He's still working real estate, and because I have a buyer that's ready to make an offer on a home not far from here, and I'm doing this he's part of my team. He's out showing the property and he's getting the contract written. So, but over the years, he bought his properties and he held on to them, or he would pull cash out and buy more. And he started buying in Texas long before I moved here. And so I asked him though, what did you do with your first house in San Diego, California? Same kind of story. I bought it for $14,500. He remembers the street address and all that kind of stuff. Remembers that. And I said, do you wish you'd kept it? And he goes, darn right, I wish I kept that house. That thing's worth $500,000 now. So I like to think about the fact that it doesn't take rocket scientists to understand the value of leverage in real estate, and then also the long-term benefits, short-term, long-term benefits. And that's why we're here today. Okay. The next thing that we want to talk about, chapter 4, is the trust factor. And the trust factor, what I'm talking about is, once again, people don't trust the industry, they don't trust the mortgage companies, they don't trust that, and it's natural because why? The news has pounded it into our heads. So what you're looking for in a real estate professional is a foundation of truth. And we're looking for mutual respect. And then we're looking for understanding. And then we're looking for security. And then what I call tethering. Truth is foundation. If you don't have integrity, or the person doesn't, that your professional doesn't have integrity, you're not going to work with them. All right, okay, that's the foundation. Mutual respect. You know that a lot of first-time home buyers don't get the respect that they deserve. And I put out a list of all the people that is employed by the purchase of a first-time home buying house, and it's a list of 25 or 30 professionals, both the title companies, appraisers, inspectors, and all these people, and the mortgage company, and all these people. I put all that, but a lot of times, real estate professionals, and I'm not being mean to my industry, but they find that first-time home buyers can be a low ROI, what I mean by a return on their investment of time. And it's unfortunate because 43% of the market are first-time home buyers. They're missing the mark. That's why I still do these things after 27 years. I'm still teaching first-time home buyers because that's a gap in the market. You know, you should be the respected, first-class citizen that you deserve to be because you're putting a lot of people to work, and I understand that. Okay, a lot of times people say, you know, the other reason why they don't necessarily want to work with first-time home buyers all the time is because a lot of agents are thinking, well, I'm going to just, if I work with someone that needs to sell a home and buy a home, I get 2 commissions for the same client. Well, you deserve the respect that you, okay. The next thing is understanding. A lot of times real estate professionals are not really spending a lot of time understanding their client's needs. In fact, that's the biggest complaint that I hear from when I pick up a client from somebody else, is that they never listened to what I was looking for in a home. And that's part of the problem, because salespeople are taught to talk as opposed to counsel, which is listen and bounce ideas off. Third is, the fourth level is security. If you get to the level of security where you're so secure with your real estate professional, you'll talk to them about your personal, you know, things about your credit and your cash and your worries, and they feel very secure with you. Okay, and the final thing is tethering. And tethering, what I mean by is that you are willing, because you are so impressed with your real estate experience, that you're willing to throw out the rope, like a tethering, to somebody else, and say, you need to rope them in and have them come and work with this person. They're trustworthy, they know what they're doing, they understand what you're doing, they take good care of you. In fact, the lady that's out with my father-in-law right now purchasing a house was somebody that was referred to me. The highest compliment a professional can get is a referral from a trusted, from a satisfied client or customer. And that's what I look for. That's what I'm looking for, is to earn, is the point where you won't tether, you won't throw out your rope to your in-laws or to your coworkers unless you get all the way to the level that you trust somebody so much that you're willing to do it. So I think that why I've done well over the years is because I've gotten to the point where I get a lot of referral business and repeat business. Another thing, you won't come back to somebody if you had not a very good experience. Okay, so tethering is really important, but also one of the things is that when you're climbing the mountain of home ownership, you know, you've got you down here and your professional is pulling you along here. He's actually throwing the rope out to you and pulling you up the mountain. Because there's certain times when you really need somebody to lean on. And I'm telling you that if the person falls, that professional's going with them. In other words, when I work with my clients, I'm tied to them. They can call me anytime, day or night, and express their concerns. And I think that that's really kind of where the point of why I'm doing presentations and have been doing these presentations since 1994 is, let me make this real point, is I'm looking for relationships. I'm looking to work with clients and take you through this process as I've done for thousands of people before. Personally, work with you one-on-one with my team. PD is a part of my team. PD is a real estate professional and also a pastor. So what better than that? She's not only sells mansions in heaven, but she sells mansions here at home. So she's part of my team. My father-in-law is part of my team. I have Michael Eckert. We have Ann Cano, Mayor Ann Cano, is she's not mayor yet, but we're thinking she's going to be a mayor. So we have these people that are on my team that we all tether together and work together to help you get into a home. And that's the whole idea. I'm not here just to teach. I'm here to get in a relationship. The statistics show that 72% of clients, home buyers, go with the first realtor they meet. Does that mean they're really going with the best one? No, they go with the 72%, two-thirds, almost two-thirds, more than two-thirds, go with that first realtor they meet. That's not always the best decision. Just because they open a door for you doesn't mean they're the best in their industry. Okay, so I'm the first realtor you've met, so I got a 72% chance of getting your business. So, okay. But once again, real estate is not about me, it's about you. It's about meeting your needs. It's about solving a problem. That's what it is. It's a housing problem. Okay, so what time do we have? Does anybody have the time?
3 minutes to 11.
Wow, that's perfect timing before we get into the second section. Okay, so we're going to take a quick break and get a glass of water or whatever. And if you have any questions, we'll before we get into the second section, I appreciate your time and thank you very much.